Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first meeting. Agenda.
Oh yeah.
Bless you. If we'd like to start, please. Agenda item number 1. Oh, where's my announcements? Sorry.
If you yes, it's just
yeah, and then you want me to do so yeah, just in my bag. So sorry. I'm just giving this and I'll put it in my bag. Right, agenda item number 1 is to note the appointment at full council on May 22nd, 2025 of the Councillor Cathy Mason as chairman and the Councillor Terry Cox as vice chairman of the Overview Committee. Two, the terms of reference and membership. To note the membership of the committee for the 2025-2026 municipal years as follows. Councillor Bestwick, Brown, Chowdhury, David, Clark, Clooney, Dale, Lawton, Mann, Sam Smith, Wheatcroft and Wilmot. To note the revised terms of reference for Overview Committee that were approved by full council on the 22nd of May 2025. As the report is just for noting only, it does not need to be moved or seconded or voted upon. Members are, however, able to ask questions on the report. You want to ask anybody would like to ask any questions on that report? No questions. Agenda item number 3, minutes. To ask the committee to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Now it is noted that there is nobody in this room that was actually present at that last meeting. This does sometimes happen at the first meeting. So if we are all happy to accept them as written, should anybody wish to challenge that later, please email Marty. Is that acceptable to everybody? Then we need a show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Number 4, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Joseph Rich is substituting for Councillor Terry Cox, who sends apologies under the category Other Reasons. Councillor Jim Vernon is substituting for Councillor David Clark, who sends apologies under the category Other Reasons. And Councillor Richard Butler is substituting for Councillor Sam Smith, who sends apologies under the category Other County Council Business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 5, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has an interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. If you have an interest to declare, you should state what type of interest it is and give brief details. Does anybody have an interest? No. There is no show of hands. Presentation introduction to the Overview Committee work programming. To advise the meeting that this item is to introduce members to the role of Overview Committee and to assist members with the development of the committee's work programme for 2025-2026. Officers will make a presentation to the meeting, after which members will have the opportunity to suggest items for inclusion on the work programme. Officer is starting, Martin.
I believe it's Nigel that's starting. It's just wait. I'll just get the presentation up to the screen.
Let's start whenever you're ready.
So just give me a moment.
Excuse me, Madam, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
I mean, there is an issue here. We were not informed that we had the opportunity at the end of this presentation that we were in a position to be able to put forward issues, etc., or operations within the council for the overview and scrutiny committees to look at. I think there is an omission there. I think that's wrong, really.
Well, if it was omitted, I do apologise, but it will not just be this meeting, sir. You will be able to email Martin onwards from this meeting. And I'm also going to ask the officers to email out to all councillors any suggestions they would like to put on. Because while we have a great mix of brainstorming ability between us, I think if for the first meeting we actually had input from everybody, that would be of great advantage to us. So if you haven't got an idea on the tip of your tongue, you may email them in afterwards.
Thank you. Morning, colleagues.
Morning.
Morning. Feels like Butley.
It's not really like.
Oh, it does. Every day it's like Butley. Yeah, so yeah, I'm Nigel Stevenson, I'm the Section 151 officer, and I was just going to talk through briefly in where the budget and budget monitoring fits in with the cycle for review committee. So first of all, I'd start with the budget monitoring process. So as everybody knows, we agree the budget, and for the County Council, we have to set a budget for the beginning of March each year. And it's basically the council plan, and I know we're going to have a slide deck in a minute around the council plan. It's the council plan in numbers. Budget monitoring timetable is at the end of every calendar month. And the reporting cycle is pretty simple in terms of the expectations for service directors and budget managers as set by the 151 officer and the executive directors, and within the framework of the budget as approved by full council in February. There are budget holders and budget approvers who have to put forecasts and approve forecasts into what we call the business management system, or BMS, and they are expected to put comments against those in terms of where their variances. And it's from those comments and variances that we consolidate in terms of the monthly report. After the day 7, when the timetable is shut, working day for the BMS system, typically by about day 10, reports are then ready for corporate leadership teams and departmental leadership teams before they then come to Finance and Resources Cabinet member, and then quarterly, those reports will be to Cabinet. And typically in a year, about twice a year, one of those budget monitoring reports are brought to Overview Committee. So there's a chance for Overview Committee then to question more deeply in those budget monitoring reports of both the 151 officer and the Cabinet member for Finance and Resources. But we also try and make sure that executive directors are there, so there's more detailed question around the budget monitoring. Typically, the budget monitoring report comprises the revenue account, the capital programme and treasury management activities, i.e. cash. And at the end of each quarter, we include reports and data around activity on the purchase ledger and the sales ledger, as well as procurement data. This is not to be confused with the Council's statutory financial accounts, which are dealt with through Governance and Ethics Committee. Thank you, Martin. The County Council has a policy and budget framework which sets out the activity around the setting of the budget and the MTFS. This slide I thought I'd put up in terms of just a brief outline in terms of how we go about that. So first of all, of course, we keep in touch with government departments around the financial aspects that could affect the County Council as well as the major suppliers. There are obviously changes that can happen around government policy. There's regulation changes, and obviously some cases there's case law that may impact on service delivery. I talk about the in-year budget monitoring, but also we've got a savings target to hit, and there are various mitigations that are in the budget. When I say mitigations, they're about the demand that we face and trying to limit the amount of demand we get, is that as opposed to cutting services. As we go through the year, we'll continue to review the pressures and inflation assumptions and identify new or emerging pressures or inflation pressures. We'll review the capital programme. We'll look at capital receipts, and we'll have to consider that in light of local government review. We'll review all the assumptions that are in there, and we'll come on to where overview will sit and will play their part in that. We may have to explore other savings options. We'll look at the reserves and the strategy around that. There is a budget consultation that we do in the autumn. So again, overview, get a chance to look at the outcome from that consultation. And then we reflect on the provisional local government settlement, which is before Christmas, and then the final local government settlement that happens in February. And of course, when it comes to the full council decision, there'll be around council tax and the other social care precepts. I thought in the box, there's particular difference for us this year because the government has announced major changes are going to take place around fair funding review. And also it's a 3-year settlement, whereas for the last 8 years, we've been going through annual local government settlements. The government's now gone for a 3-year settlement, but obviously for 26-27, it will feel like a 1-year local government settlement. And the warning I would give is the last time that we had a 3-year local government settlement is when we saw revenue support grant disappear. There is also at the same time a business rates reset and the government's intention to change the formulas for distribution of business rates to introduce more factors around deprivation. And there's also currently a consultation out there on modernising council tax, which is more about moving from 10 months to 12 months being the default position for paying council tax. Some reviews around some of the discounts around council tax. It's not about changing bands, but they're also including the ability for members of the public to challenge their banding easier than it has been currently. Thank you, Roger. Timetable for setting the budget. Obviously, during the summer, there's a lot of activity where we do a lot of reviews around pressures and inflation because as the year progresses, we get more thoughts around what pressures are looking like in year, which will reflect in future years. By the time we get to the autumn, we'll come to Cabinet with a budget update, and then Overview Committee get a chance to look at the report that went to Cabinet to comment and review. We'll get the provisional local government settlement in December, and there may be some early thoughts around what the strategy is going to be for setting the budget, although those won't be finalised until February. And then there'll be another report to Overview in January, where you get, again, a chance to quiz the 151 officer and the Cabinet member for Finance and Resources around the assumptions in the budget and the medium-term strategy before we get to the tax base in February, when we get the final local government settlement and the full council decide on the budget. So, in brief, where Overview fits in terms of the budget, is you get to receive and able to comment around the budget monitoring report, where we are with over and underspends and the risks and the management actions that are being taken. In November, you get to comment upon the development of the budget as it progresses through Cabinet. And then in January, you get again to comment on the budget from the outcome from the public consultation, more quiz around the assumptions, pressures and inflation, the mitigations, and make recommendations for Cabinet as they consider the budget alongside other factors, including the public consultation, as they sit in February, proposing a budget for full council at the end of February. Thank you.
Morning, members. So my name is Lucy Peel, I'm Director of Public Service Reform. So a couple of items from me then for you to consider. So the first relates to the Council's strategic plan. So members may be aware that the Council has an existing strategic plan, the Nottinghamshire Plan, which is supported by an annual delivery plan that looks at what the Council is looking to achieve and the steps it's taken to achieve that. Outlines the vision, ambitions and priorities for the organisation, the changes the council's looking to achieve and how it's seeking to achieve those changes. As Nigel described, it very much aligns with the budget. So as you might anticipate, the budget identifies where the council's financial resources are spent, and the council plan articulates what those priorities are. It also picks up where the organisation is seeking to make changes to improve our residents' outcomes, but also address the financial sustainability gap. You'd expect to see that within the council's plan. So it balances the administration's policy priorities alongside regulatory requirements that the organisation needs to meet. So particularly in respect of the people services that the council is responsible for providing, taking account of performance against, for example, CQC inspection of adult social care services, CQC Ofsted inspection of services for children with special education needs and disabilities, and Ofsted inspection of services for children in need of social care. The plan is part of a wider strategic planning and performance framework. So that's around making sure that members and the public can see what the council is committing to delivering and what progress it's making in achieving those things outlined in the plan. So there's a supporting performance framework alongside the plan, which again enables progress in delivering the plan to be tracked. And as I've said, the plan itself allows council resources to be prioritised. So given the change in administration, Cabinet last week agreed to establish a working group to oversee the development of a refreshed strategic plan for the organisation. So that work will take place over the summer, considering the evidence base, so some of the things I've just described, how well is the council report performing in some regards, what's the financial position, what are the things that residents' feedback are important to them for the council to prioritise. So the working group will look at these, we'll drive this work over the summer, including consultation and engagement, consider that feedback, and then develop the next iteration, if you like, of the plan for the organisation. So in line with the terms of reference, there's an opportunity then for both of you committed to consider that draft plan and those priorities in the autumn in advance of that plan working its way through to county council. So that's a bit of input on the Nottinghamshire plan. And then the second area that I will talk to is local government reorganisation. So members will be aware that the council, alongside other councils in the area, received a statutory invitation from government to put forward proposals for local government reorganisation. That work was started early in the year, with the statutory invitation being received in February. The expectation of government is that leaders across the 9 councils within the area of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire work together in order to try and put forward proposals for local government reorganisation, which are in the best interests of the whole area and residents across the whole area of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, with the ambition that areas are able to jointly submit one proposal for the area. The government has set 6 criteria against which proposals will be assessed. So they cover a whole range of factors, including population size, ability to improve outcomes for residents, financial sustainability, support for devolution. So recognising that we are in a combined authority area through East Midlands County Combined Authority, and so any proposed changes to local government needs to make sense within the context of EMCA. So what happens in Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, also needing to consider what's happening in Derby and Derbyshire. So it makes sense both from governance terms for the combined authority, but also in supporting EMCA's drive around growth, for example. So there's a whole set of criteria which proposals will need to consider, and government will make assessment against those criteria. There is some funding that has been provided to the area as a whole in order to support preparation for proposals. However, the expectation is that any transition costs to new unitaries would be met through existing budgets and through use of capital receipts. So areas were required to submit interim plans in March, and so this council did that in line with the other 9 councils in the area, and subsequently received feedback from MHCLG in early June. That feedback is intended to support the development of the final proposals, which are due to government at the end of November. So work is ongoing across the 9 councils in order to further the options appraisal work that had been undertaken up to March, in order for a decision to be reached at the appropriate time on what the best option is for the area of Nottinghamshire for the residents that we serve. So an opportunity for everybody to consider whether this is an area which they wish to explore at a relevant time in the coming months.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Viv Robbins. I'm Director of Public Health and Communities, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction into a new area to overview, which is around public health. And one of the reasons why public health has been brought into the remit of Overview Committee is really about seeing it in that really cross-council enabling role. So really seeing health and wellbeing as an asset to a range of the broader services that we deliver across the council, and really thinking around how do we ensure that our public health lens and community lens approach is linked into the DNA of the organisation, to really think around that early health and prevention lens, but also thinking around how we're reducing health inequalities. What you can see here is in terms of some of the key outcomes that we're trying to achieve from a public health specific lens. So the key objective that we're trying to do is to improve and protect the health and wellbeing of the population, and think about how we reduce some of those health inequalities, which are those unfair or avoidable differences that we see in health outcomes across our population that we know we can do work to tangibly make a difference to. And those are between different groups or different geographies. And I'll come on to that in a little bit more in a second. But what you can see here is some of the key outcomes that we'll be looking at for improving for Nottinghamshire. So one is around how long people live, so life expectancy, and we can see the difference between males and females. So we know that females live slightly longer than males in the county, and that's similar to a national picture. But then when we look at how many years people live in good health, we can see that actually for our female population, they actually have less years in good health than our male counterparts. And we know that specifically in Nottinghamshire, that's reducing. And that's something that we've just unpicked a little bit more on in terms of the Director of Public Health annual report, which I'll come on to in a little bit more detail. In terms of health inequalities, though, we know that there are significant differences in the opportunities that people have to have good health and well-being and the length of their life between different groups across the population. So we know, for example, between our most affluent and our most deprived areas in Nottinghamshire, women will live 7.3 years less if you're in some of the least deprived areas than the most deprived, and for men that increases to just over 10 years. So some real differences in terms of the opportunities and the health outcomes that our residents do have across the patch, particularly thinking of our more affluent north and our more deprived areas our more deprived areas in the north and our more affluent areas in the south. So really keen to think around how we have that lens through all of the work that we do. And in terms of one of the ways that we can improve health and well-being, building a healthy society is a bit like building a really strong home. So we need to have really strong building blocks in place to enable our communities to thrive. And what we're demonstrating here is some of those key building blocks that we want to think around across the council to make sure they're as strong as possible to allow people to have the best health and wellbeing outcomes that we've just seen previously. So that might be good work, good transport, a good community around them, a good environment and surrounding areas that they live in, good education, good housing and good food. And you'll see many of these things link into and overlap with many other areas that the council will work on. Excellent. Because what we do know as well is that when those building blocks are missing, that's when we're seeing those differences in those health outcomes. And this diagram just builds on that a little bit more to just show you that there's different areas of factors that influence our health and well-being. So we know, for example, that accessing healthcare services only actually contributes around 20% of our overall health and well-being. And it's those overall factors which we can see in the range of different areas there that actually have a much broader impact on how we live our lives and how we are born, live, work and grow. And we're keen to think around how we impact those different factors through the work of the organisation and the broader system. Next slide, please. So in terms of this slide, I just wanted to show the breadth of the Public Health and Communities division, which is a fairly new division within the council, really rooted in our community. And just to acknowledge that there's some areas of this division that will be reviewed in the Place Select Committee, but the public health specific elements we will make sure them come to overview. So within that diagram, we're particularly thinking around health protection. So what are we doing to protect the health of our population? And that might be from a range of factors, from things like infectious diseases, it might be environmental, it might be major incidents and emergency planning preparation, to also thinking around things around what services we deliver. So we deliver a range of preventative services for health and wellbeing, whether that's for our children in our 0 to 19 and Healthy Families programme, whether that's things around integrated wellbeing services or some of our broader services that we have. And then really thinking around how do we work with our partners to have that overall improvement around health and wellbeing. So in terms of how we do it, there's a range of ways that we do it, and that can be much more about being intelligence-led. We commission or deliver a range of services. We absolutely work in partnership across the system, particularly thinking around our health colleagues, but also our police and crime commissioner, and thinking from a community safety point of view. And then we do a lot around how do we make the places that we live the best places that we can be. So in terms of some potential work plan and priorities, obviously Nigel and Lucy have already articulated some of those areas. And I suppose these are a little bit more of a deep dive into some of those areas that will link into things like the council budget, but also the Nottinghamshire plan, but more from that public health lens. So potential areas to consider is how we're working with our communities, developing our thriving and resilient communities, and really thinking around the opportunities that we've got with local government reform, but also with the new division to work in a way that we haven't done before, to really tackle those health inequalities, because we know that our communities are different and we need to reflect that. There's something around our early help and prevention lens and thinking around what we're doing to reducing health inequalities. So these are some of the statutory responsibilities that the council will have, which are linked through into the Director of Public Health and Communities. There's an opportunity around the Joint Health and Wellbeing Strategy, which will have a lot of alignment as well with work around the Nottinghamshire plan, and that's due to be revised for 2026. But we're also doing some work at the moment around the best start, so really thinking around how we're prioritising the best opportunities for our children, particularly in those first 1,001 days from preconception up to the age of 2. What we would suggest is that we regularly, on an annual basis, we would bring some of the public health outcomes framework and an update in terms of what the service is doing, because the public health outcomes really look at those high level outcomes across Nottingham, so that you will have a really good understanding around what areas we're doing really well in and what areas we might want to do a little bit more in. And that will also support you in terms of other things that you might want to look at in a little bit more detail. And then, as a suggestion, if you're interested, we're just recently publishing the Director of Public Health annual report, which is on women's health, which was specifically due to looking at that healthy life expectancy and knowing that in Nottinghamshire that's going in the wrong direction for our women, but also it's going in the wrong direction at a faster rate than the national average. Hence why we did a little bit more work to understand that. And if you're interested, that's something you can. I think that's all.
The final bit is just from me. So just before we have kind of like, obviously, like before the chair opens up to discussion, it's just talking about focusing activity. You've all have heard me talk about this before, but for scrutiny to be effective, its activity needs to be focused on areas of the council's work where it really can make an impact. That's also important due to the time. Also, we've got so many committees this year, we've got so many task and finish reviews that we can take out. There's also only a finite resource to support scrutiny and the members. It's really important that we're not looking at things that have been looked at in detail recently. So I've just included some of the things we've looked at in detail. We did a big task and finish review on consultation and resident engagement recently. We've looked in detail about vaping, Healthy Families programme. So unless something kind of like changes in these areas, these may be areas you probably want to not kind of like look at again, because we've looked at them quite in depth quite recently over the last couple of years. Shall I just explain?
Yeah.
So obviously the chair will be asking you for your suggestions, and obviously we will open that out. And if there's anything you want to suggest after the meeting, if you've had a little longer think, that's absolutely fine. Just let me know. So from the list, it's created today and over the next week, we'll create a long list. And then what will happen, myself and we'll meet with the chair and vice chair, and the chair will also like to invite to that meeting sort of long list representatives of the other groups. So one representative from the other political groups, that would be great. So there'll be a meeting of 5 members, plus myself and Sarah. We'll go through the long list, prioritise it, looking at the factors that I've talked about lots of times before. Is it in the corporate plan? Is it an area where scrutiny can make an impact? And is it something that's impacting residents across Nottinghamshire? If an item scores high on all of those factors, that's something we'll look at. Once we've made a short list, I'll then work with the officers to kind of like program that across the year so that members are looking at the right items at the right time where they can make the most impact. And then the final work programme, along with the select committee work programmes, will come to the first overview committee after the summer at the beginning of September. So over to you, Chair.
Would anybody like to ask any questions of the officers on the reports? Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting report that. I'm new to the overview and there's 1 or 2 items on here that I'm not absolutely. Will the reports on new policies and budgets of each individual service, will that be brought to the committee on a regular basis? Or has it got to be asked for? You know.
Yeah. So at overview committee, you get the overall council's budget as you would do in terms of the overall council plan, except for public health that will be in more detail. At the other scrutiny panels, place, adults and children's, they do tend to get more detailed information around their budget performance, as well as their other performance and meeting KPIs and other items. So those in terms of the more detail would happen at the other scrutiny panels.
Yeah, I'm absolutely, I think it's essential that we do get to know exactly what the position is, the new policies, and if it's altering budgets, etc., that we do get to know about, so we can comment on that issue. Next, at the present time, the Health and Wellbeing Board are doing a full review on women and families and so forth. Will the actual policy, when it is brought to the council, will it come before the meeting before the overview committee so that we can have a look at it ourselves? Is that possible?
Yeah, so certainly we've got a lot of work that's going on in terms of what we might need to consider for our joint health and wellbeing strategy. So that's one of the reasons why I thought that might be something that you might be interested to look at, so that you can make sure that you're shaping and commenting on that before a final draft is approved. So Councillor Wilmot, I'd expect that some of those areas around Best Start, women's health and things like that will absolutely filter into that. But it's probably best that you take it in that broader level. And if there are specific things from a public health point of view, we can also make sure we highlight those and see if that's something that you would be interested in.
The next one, of course, is the big one, reorganisation. Obviously, the proposal has been looked at by the county, the city, and all the districts at the present time. Will the final result come to us to have a look at it so we can comment on it individually as members of the overview committee? I wonder if that's possible before the decision is taken in November, whatever it is, November to the government. Because it does seem to me that the government are intent on making the decision themselves anyway. So, and I just want give us the opportunity to scrutinise the decision of all the different organisations, the district, county, and the city.
So I just pick up on that. Obviously, we're in a space at the moment where each of the 9 councils in Nottinghamshire is kind of considering the published short list of potential models that have been discussed up till this point. The decision-making process, as we sit here today, remains to a certain extent fluid, although it's understood that the deadline for kind of final submissions of proposals is the 28th of November. So between now and then, I think as Lucy indicated, there's potentially an opportunity absolutely for overview committee to receive and consider the emerging proposals from the kind of partnership of Nottinghamshire councils that are currently working together to develop options for local government reorganisation.
My next question is on highways, transport and adult social care. They're the two priorities, I think, of this council. I wonder if we could have a scrutinise whatever is happening in that area, so we can put forward what we feel.
Yes, so John, obviously this is what this bit's about. So if people can put forward what they think is their priorities, it will go on to the
Well,
list.
that's what my two real priorities.
They'll be looked at by the relevant select committees.
Yes,
Not
Not overview, yeah. As long as someone somewhere gets the opportunity to scrutinise that position. That's
So just to pick up on the highways issue that you've raised in Council, Wilmot, the Cabinet last week approved the establishment of a subgroup of Cabinet to undertake a review of our highways arrangements with a view to reporting the outcomes of that activity back to Cabinet in the autumn. The report also included a reference to the potential consideration of those outcomes and any emerging recommendations by the Place Select Committee as well. So as Martin has indicated, there's an opportunity through the relevant departmental committee to review those departmental specific activities like highways and transport. And I think the same would apply to matters of either policy development or operational management within a department like adult social care, because of course we have a scrutiny function for that department too.
Thank you.
And my final point.
Hang on. Pause, John.
Okay.
Councillor Lawson has been waiting
Yeah, no,
patiently.
I'm just a little confused because the being reported in the press is that the leading group at Nottinghamshire County Council and other reform councils across the country are going to join forces and not take part in the LGR process. Therefore, I'm a little confused. Why, if we're not taking part, then why are we having a presentation that is putting forward proposals at the end of November? It's a difficult question as far as the office is concerned. Obviously, it's a political issue. So whether I'm picking up the wrong message in the press, or whether the leading group have changed their view, or what the situation with it is, and whether it is a statutory requirement for this council to put forward proposals by the 28th of November.
Well, I believe that it's the government that is requiring a proposal. So I don't think it's open to options. Am I right, Martin? Oh, sorry.
So I'm happy to confirm that it isn't a statutory requirement that we submit proposals, or that Nottinghamshire submits proposals by the 28th of November, but there is a government ask, instruction, define it how you will, requirement that places make final submissions by the 28th.
So do we have an official policy as far as the leading group is concerned on whether they intend to take part in the LGR process?
I'm going to say you'll have to speak to Cabinet on that one, Councillor Lumpton. It's not really something this overview committee.
Well, we can't scrutinise it if we're not taking part in it.
Well, I would put it on the plan and we will find out that one for you. Just as if we don't join in, what will happen, sir? It's a strong recommendation, and we don't send anything and we don't join in.
So
the government, I believe, will just impose it anyway.
So
is that the
thing? So I think it's the case that if this council chooses not to submit a proposal by the end of November, then it is the case that other councils may still choose to do so, and therefore it is the case that government may choose to make a decision based on those submissions around the future of local government in Nottinghamshire. So I suppose the essence of that answer is that if this council chooses not to make a submission, then it doesn't mean that there will not be a reorganisation of local government in Nottinghamshire.
Thank you very much. So I think the answer is, regardless of position, I think it should be discussed if it's put down on the work programme. If you want to do that, send your thoughts into Martin, etc., which is going to be open to everybody to put down what you think would benefit Nottinghamshire residents, and is worth our time and effort to try and get a positive outcome for these people. That is the message I would like being sent out. And I know I've made it a bit worse because I've asked, or will be asking Martin, to extend this to all councillors to get back. And it doesn't matter how silly you may think your subject is, it may join or combine into another subject and be included. It's the passion to get the results that will be the most important thing. Would anybody else like to ask questions? Councillor
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. All very interesting. Could you just remind us of the committee cycle of this overview group? How many times, how frequent the meetings are? I generally just can't.
7 or 8 weeks.
It's every 6 weeks. So
6 weeks, sorry.
every 6 roughly we'll have, say, September, November, January, March, May, July. Obviously, we didn't have one in May this year.
Okay, and as you've heard this morning, and as you see, there is a lot to this with it, because there is so many potential items that need to be reviewed and scrutinised. Now, in the old days, and you have touched on this, but I just want a bit more clarification. Previously, the vice chairman of the committee would be a member of the opposition, and but it's different now. Now, you have mentioned that you're opening it up to all parties to submit suggestions and all the rest of it, and I'm sure we're all very grateful for that. But how, given the likelihood you're going to get an awful lot of requests and suggestions in, how are you going to decide which items you're going to review and scrutinise, and also how can the opposition be sure that their items will be included? Just how do you plan to?
Yeah, well, when we have the meeting to go through the long list, it will be the chair, vice chair, and one representative from the other political group. So whoever you'd like to send from your group, that will have that discussion. And in that meeting, we will assess each suggestion against the three main criteria, which is ability of scrutiny to make an impact, alignment with like the council plan, and is it an issue that's impacting residents across Nottinghamshire? And depending on how long the list is, for the items to get onto the short list to go on the work programme, they've got to score highly. They've got to score highly on all those criteria.
So who's doing that score?
It'll be the chair, vice chair, and the representative from each of the other political groups.
From each of the other groups?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So there'll be 5 members on that attend that meeting.
Okay. So you're saying they'll all have an equal vote?
It's an informal meeting where we have that discussion, and obviously with scrutiny, members try and put politics aside, kind of like come together. And we did do this last year when we did have opposition vice chairs. We include a member of the other political group who wasn't either chair or vice chair. So we have done this before, and it did work.
Yeah. Chair. When we have this 5 meeting of representatives to look at the list, I would expect the list to be a list of subjects and not a list of who submitted them. So if somebody wants to put roads, I would expect the title to be roads, not roads submitted by a Conservative person, or highways, social care by a Reform person. So I don't care who submits what. When I'm picking, I shall be picking on the scoring and not the party who submitted it. And I would recommend that anybody else attending that meeting absorb this temperament and do it for the benefit of the people of Nottinghamshire, not for who recommended it. Because you might get recommendations from the Conservative people saying roads. You might get them from the Reform people saying roads. It's not who picked it, it's whether it scores appropriately. So can we have that settled right here, right now, meeting number 1? I don't care who admits it. If it works, let's get results, people. Please.
Thank you.
Oh, shut up. Thank you very much. Councillor Clune.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to declare about what actual things we're actually covering. So we're not actually covering roads, we're covering things around the Nottinghamshire plan, like finances, things like that, and the public health, is that correct?
Yeah, and anything within the chief executive's department.
Chief executive department. I think that's the word I was searching for.
Yeah.
That was the phrase I was searching for. Thank you. Thank you for that.
And it's also the case that because we have and correct me if I'm wrong here, Mike, but because we have a scrutiny structure that has departmental committees as well as an overview committee, there's a space for overview to take an interest in matters around council activity that have a kind of cross-cutting impact across the entire authority as well, and that's why public health has been added to the remit of overview, because the work of Viv and the team impacts upon all aspects and all departments.
I'd say it's just making suggestions, because if you make a suggestion that isn't relevant to this committee, it will be relevant to one of the other ones.
Yeah.
And we can just add it to the long list for those committees, because we're doing the same thing for each of the 3 select committees over the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you.
I suppose the other thing to say is that the Nottinghamshire plan and the refreshed Nottinghamshire plan, as it emerges over the summer and the autumn, offers a potential framework as well for the activity of overview committee, and that might be something to consider in the priority setting conversations to come.
Is there a deadline? What's the deadline for the suggestions to get in?
Martin, what is your deadline?
I'd probably like to, that would probably like next Friday, give people like a week.
Is that all right with everybody? A week to get your suggestions in? You can take it back to your people. Martin will email out. You don't have to make a suggestion, it's not compulsory, but if you have something that you would like to suggest, give Martin a chance to compile it. Councillor Wellman.
My final point. Sorry.
Sorry, John, it's just picking up on that point. What about as a year goes on, things happen, because life goes on, life happens and things happen, and a member, whoever they are, thinks, oh, we need to take a look at this.
Yeah.
How will we handle that?
We have the work programs, you try and set them in advance, but obviously it's a long time, isn't it? That things happen, things change, government policy changes, something we may say, oh, we can look at that in March. Government policy might change, they might delay it, oh, we can't look at that now. And things happen. So the work programs are flexible. We have added additional things on, like last year we had an additional overview committee to look at the developing relationship with EMCA. That was an additional meeting. It wasn't something we'd like planned when we did the work program, so that was like brought on, and there will be examples of items that we like either brought forward or pushed back, just so we're always like responsive to the current situation. So it's not set in stone. It can change.
Flexibility.
It is flexible, yes.
I've been a councillor for many years.
Too long, John.
Too long. Yeah, quite possibly. I just thought, I can remember the overview committees in lots of the district councils, etc., over a number of years. And many of them at that time used to put forward possible new policies to be discussed by the cabinet at the following meeting and so forth. Will we be able to put on the agenda any new possible policy in this regions?
I think that's just been covered.
Yeah.
Literally.
What I'd note on that, as scrutiny members, and we say this at every overview committee, I would always encourage you to keep well on top of the forward plan. if you look at the forward plan, you will see the policies that are coming up. And if there's something on the forward plan that you would like more information on, it's come to myself, come to the chair, and we'll see what we can do, because we have done kind of like out of committee, we have to kind of like briefings and circulating information. So keep an eye on the forward plan. I would definitely recommend it.
So how long up to the meeting would you have to discuss it, make sure it's on the agenda? Any possible?
Well, it all depends, but like I say, just keep your eye on the forward plan. Keith emails out to all members every time the forward plan is updated. So always, I would always recommend having a look at the forward plan. And there is a section on the forward plan that says new items added. So you don't have to look at it, or just look at the new items added. As long as you're doing that every time, you'll know what's coming up in the coming months.
Sorry, if I may just point, there is a problem with the forward plan. It's only for a month. Doesn't give you a chance to scrutinise anything.
Just to clarify, members, that the forward plan is published so that it gives members a month's notice, of a minimum of a month's notice of decisions to be taken, but the forward plan does take a much longer forward look than a month.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, if I may, I've got a serious issue. Because of the delay within the June meetings, this has meant that this meeting is taking place in July. You have a whole department, scrutiny department, that's doing nothing, has done nothing since the elections, prior to the elections, did nothing in April, nothing in May, June, July, and then we've got the August recess, but nothing in August, and then we're not going to meet until September. So the point I'm trying to make is that your department is basically doing nothing for at least half a year, and therefore we should try and speed up the process as much as we can to be able to try and get that those officers working on behalf of the people of Nottinghamshire, and maybe even have another meeting towards the end of before the August recess to be able to at least allow them to be able to scrutinise. If we don't have a meeting until September, the likelihood is we'll make a decision in September, and therefore they won't be visiting anything until October. So we're another month down the road. So we need to be urgent as far as the Opium Scrutiny Committee is concerned. Just a view.
Well, thank you. I'm sure I've heard in the discussions today that the work's going to be done through the summer recess.
On what? Nothing scrutinised. What are they scrutinising? There's no programme.
No, on the programme, to give us a full programme for the full year.
The work carries on over the summer. What we do, like I say, what we're doing kind of like in a public meeting this year is what we did there in like just like more informal meetings last year. So we had like, it was more or less just after the general election last year. We did very similar things with members. All members were invited, and then we work over the summer, as we've done ever since we went to executive arrangements. We work over the summer, working with officers, working with the chairs and vice chairs and the other representatives to get the work programmes, and all the work programmes come to the first meeting in September, which for you is normally like it's the first meeting back after the summer. It's normally in the first week, and that will have substantive items on.
Councillor Bestwick.
I think what Councillor Lawton meant was, as a committee, we're not going to have the opportunity to scrutinise any of the work that this administration is doing for 6 months. I don't know about other members, but I found out I was on the Overviewing Scrutiny Committee about 5 weeks ago. And so I took the time to find out what the Overview and Scrutiny Committee does, what its role is, and how it can question the administration. And whilst I thank officers for their input today, it was basically a glorified training exercise. We've missed an opportunity to find out what this administration has been up to for the first 2 months. And as you said earlier, we're here to do the best work for Nottinghamshire residents. We've been able to do that today. And whilst the training has been valuable, we've missed an opportunity. And we're not going to get another one until September. That's 6 months out of a 4-year term that we've been able to do nothing. And I don't think the residents of Nottinghamshire looking at this are going to be very pleased about that. So if we can have a meaningful overview and scrutiny committee meeting before September, I think that would be best, not just for this committee, but for everybody who lives and works in Nottingham and voted to put this administration in charge. I'll leave it with you.
Thank you very much. Has anybody else got any questions or would like to put any points to Martin now? Or are you all happy to take it away and pass?
Yeah, good idea. We had we had so many cross debate basically about the 6 month. We've been in elected since May.
Yes.
So what you guys done, we was over in the scrutiny before and bringing this subject now. So basically you guys didn't do much work before then.
Loads of work.
Responsible was.
Work for a
Yeah, but the way you said, the officer is not doing their job right.
No, I didn't say
So
that
you
at
are
all.
scrutinizing for time being.
I
So you
said,
need to look
you've
at
been
your
in
facts before you
administration
can
for
speak.
2 months, so we'd like to know what you've been doing.
So
And so
you need
the
to
rest of
Gentlemen,
it's not in charge.
Enough.
Get the work.
No. Well, we can debate the rights and wrongs of the timings of meetings till the cow comes home. We're not going to. In here, don't have it. Yes, you've made a political point, sir.
I've not made a political point.
It is, and it's out now.
I've made
It was any more questions for the officers about the scrutiny committee's work plan, please?
So just to conclude, what I'll do, I'll email, as the chair's requested, I'll email all non-executive members. I'll include the presentation. I'll include the report on the terms of that's included in the agenda that gives the terms of reference for the committee, and I'll request that all suggestions are sent through to myself by the end of next week. And for the other political groups, if you could let me know who you'd like to send to the shortlisting meeting, that would be fantastic. So from the 3 other groups, because obviously from the administration, it could be the chair and vice chair will be attending, and then we'll get the meeting sorted, so we can start the work programme.
That will probably happen.
Oh yeah, June. Exciting take.
Yeah. John, did you read the question?
Yeah, I've listened to the discussion and
Well, we're not discussing the discussion. We're discussing whether or not we've got anything for the work plan, John.
would it be possible if there's some issue came up urgent that needed to be discussed? Wouldn't it be right that we had a subcommittee or
Absolutely, if there is an urgent change,
that's all.
that anything happens that is relevant to the overview committee, Martin will be in touch with
Brilliant.
all of us,
That's
and we
all
will
I'm asking.
accommodate the very best we can, as quick as we can. That is what happens with life and urgent matters.
Yeah.
I've got something I'd like to put forward, if I may.
Please do.
Yeah, those people who are aware, the previous administration rolled out 18 family hubs into Ashfield and Mansfield. And they've been running now for quite a few months, something that Lucy knows a lot about. I think we should be scrutinising how effective these family hubs are. Right from the start, really, we should be looking at them and assessing the operation of those family hubs to make sure that they're working effectively.
May I ask how long have they been in operations?
Lucy, when's the first one went in last year, didn't it? 12 months ago.
So they've been rolled out across the county in a programme over the last, I think, 2 years probably.
Yeah.
So he's done.
But we should be looking at the effectiveness of them to make sure that they're working properly and to see whether there are any further improvements can be made as far as the process is concerned. It's an integral part of dealing with the demand, particularly in young people.
So what I might suggest is that's a matter for the Children and Family Select Committee. But of course, it is part of a wider range of strategies to try and support people to get the right help at the right time as early as possible. So in some of the, there's a link there probably to the work that we've introduced around the best arts.
Closely involved with it as well.
But when I say, even if it went to a specific committee for in-depth, it would be still nice for this committee to see an overarching report of all the 8 to see, you know, what.
And that might speak to the broader approach to.
That's what I'm saying.
To kind of early intervention that we take as a council.
Not as a sort of a complete item, but as a.
Yeah, because family hubs are a significant part of our overall early intervention offer.
Last one, John.
Last one, yeah. Can I just say that the hubs were discussed at the Health and Wellbeing Board extensively. I can just say that they are performing, and the reason I'm saying they're performing because there is a number of organisations that are regularly in the hubs, so that people that are going in there with different problems can actually speak to someone that has a knowledge of their problem.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else with a question relevant to this committee's agenda today? Vivian.
Just to add to Councillor Wilmot's point, and to provide assurance, the family hubs are one of the key areas that are a priority within the joint health and wellbeing strategy, as is, because there's a key priority about making sure that we deliver the best outcomes for our children. So there are regular updates in terms of the performance around the joint health and wellbeing strategy that go through the Health and Wellbeing Board, which is what Councillor Wilmot is articulating there. If it is helpful, I'm more than happy to share the link with Martin to share those presentations and slide where you will see some of the additional information that's just literally in the Health and Wellbeing Board that's just gone, where we had a much more detailed debate about that. So if that's helpful, I'm happy to share that.
If I may, Madam Chairman, as an input really, understand what you're saying, but the important thing as far as scrutinising through over scrutiny committee is concerned, it puts forward recommendations to maybe improve the service as it looks into it. So it needs to be, whilst I'm listening to what your monitoring reports are concerned, the members need the opportunity to be able to scrutinise what is happening and make recommendations accordingly, and maybe even make no recommendations if they're working perfectly.
Well, it can get included into the long list, and the group of 5 will score it accordingly. Councillor Butler.
Yes, just a little observation, suggestion, because I'm decades old, like John, been here a while. You made a comment about asking officers or asking questions of the officers. Don't forget that really happens when you're actually discussing whatever it is you're overviewing and scrutinising. There will be questions to the leadership as to what the items on the agendas are likely to be. So it's just a word of sage advice.
Bless you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Is if everybody happy, we're going to close the meeting. Yeah, close then. Thank you.